right, so just before we introduce Kaihan, and I'm really excited to have him present to us today. I've seen him speak a few times over the last 15 years. He's always consistently blown me away. And one of the things that I learned, and I'll kind of paraphrase, because I'm sure he's going to kind of get into it, is strategy and planning are two very, very different things. We are as different as men and women, right? Like men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Men are not hairy versions of women. Strategy is not a different term for planning. Strategy is different from planning. So what I want is to Kaihan to introduce us to that today, and then in our discussions and our breakouts afterwards, we're going to stay focused on the strategy part of our business, which is certainly tied to planning. But kind of, if you want to maybe even riff on that for a minute or so as part of your presentation, hopefully that would be super helpful. Because in the breakout that I just came out of, a lot of our discussion was around planning, and I think companies miss the opportunity to be strategic too. So
Yeah,
I'll
no,
just
that
do
makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let him drop into the presentation. So Kaihan is the CEO of Outthinker Networks, a global think tank of chief strategy and innovation executives shaping the future of business. He's a sought-after keynote speaker, and he's recognized by Global Gurus and Thinkers 50 as one of the top 30 global thinkers in strategy and innovation. His work helps organizations generate breakthrough ideas that drive transformation and growth in our accelerated world of change. Leveraging skills and experience from McKinsey and Company with rigorous research and emerging trends, Kaihan designs practical business tools that he delivers through engaging and hands-on experiences. He's also an innovation catalyst to business leaders and CXOs at some of the world's most admired companies. To date, his work has generated over $2.5 billion in new revenue for clients that include Aetna, CVS, JP Morgan, Lockheed Martin, Procter & Gamble, IBM, and Yahoo. He's also a prolific writer. He's published 5 books, so he's one behind me,
Catching
including
up in
best-selling
May.
competition. I'm sure he's got another one coming out, though. He's almost a dizzying schedule of keynotes, workshops, and ongoing research and writing. He still teaches at Wharton's Executive Education Program, at Florida International University, at New York University, and he hosts the Outthinkers podcast. He also plays an active role on 2 corporate advisory boards. He holds a doctorate in strategy and has degrees from the University of Pennsylvania School of Engineering, Wharton, Columbia Business School, and London Business School. He is a mother from Bangladesh, a father from Germany, and a wife from Latin America. So he's truly a global citizen who brings a huge worldly perspective. And he also is a passionate cook and lives in Miami with his wife, 3 kids, and 2 cats and a dog. Kaihan, thank you for joining.
Covered everything. Thank you. Yeah, I have a new book that I'm working on for 2 years that's going to be released at the end of May called Proximity. I'm going to talk a little bit out here. And I've started working on a strategy book with Vern Harnish, kind of taking all of this and simplifying it to just like 4 things. That'll take another year. So anyway, it's great. It's great to be here with you guys. How much time should I kind of talk versus discuss?
Versus like
What
versus
yeah,
versus
versus like I've got slides, yeah, and so
I think you've got
how
about
do you want to move?
55. You got about 55 minutes total, including
Mhm.
Q&A.
Okay, all right. So I'll try to keep. I cut down my slides a lot. I you know we have a peer group not unlike like you guys. We're heads of strategy of large enterprises and then entrepreneurs inside large enterprises. And my most frustrating experience is when I invite a speaker and they say they're just going to speak for 20 minutes and then they've got 100 slides and we have no time for discussion. So I tried to cut down my slides a lot, but pretty much what I do mostly now are talks that take 50 minutes. So I'm really going to try not to do that, but you can interrupt me and I might just skip through some slides so that we can have a discussion because, you know, your backgrounds are just so interesting. And I want to also learn from you and make this a dialogue. Okay, so with that said, I will share my screen. Great. So I think it's helpful to think about your strategy as a flow of ideas. And maybe you could say the distinction between strategy and planning is planning would be maybe the alignment. I don't know if I'm in line with what you shared, Cameron, but for me, planning is the alignment of all the decisions around the strategy, you know, And so like you guys decide, we're going to go and hunt fish in this pond. And what do we need poles, and we need a path, and we need nets, and we have rolls, and we line everyone, but it is choosing the pond that we're going to fish in that is the strategy. And anyway, so let's think about strategy as a result of a flow of ideas. I like to think of not as one big strategy, but lots and lots of strategies. This is Ray Kroc, founder of modern day McDonald's. He said, my attitude was that competition could try to copy my style, but they can't read my mind. So I'll leave them a mile and a half behind. So let's think about our ability to create the future, to win the future over our competition, is to overwhelm them with this flow of ideas. We want a lot of ideas. Many people think that our companies don't have enough. We have too many ideas, but that's probably because we're not killing off ideas quickly enough. We want a lot of ideas. There's a lot of research that shows this. There's a measure of entrepreneurial intensity. There's some good research. We've also done our own research on it. And you can kind of think about, with what frequency do people inside your organization come up with innovative ways of doing things? And what is the degree of innovativeness or newness of those things that they do? Is it innovative, risk-taking, proactive? And if you do that, you can measure people. I can give you a link later. We have this thing where you can kind of measure yourself against other people. But you could say we've very infrequently come up with new strategies, and they're of low degree. In that case, you're a business model operator, or you can be further out to the right. And there are these different categories of types of companies. I made these up and named them myself just to give us a sense. But the main point is we move further out to the right, and we don't have to all be to the right. You only need to be one step further to the right than your competition to have a significantly superior ability to recruit and retain top talent, and to generate superior financial performance over a 3-year period. So we want to start moving in that direction. We want a lot of ideas. If we look at the internal success rate of a strategy, and by strategy, we'll talk about this in a moment. It could mean a new pricing model. It could be a new channel. It could be a new operational norm. I'm not talking about just a customer and product. If our success rate of an internal strategy is about 15%, we want to have maybe 4 new successful strategies a year. Then we need to launch 25 successful strategies, which means we need to pilot 170 strategies, which means we want to test 1,000 strategies. We want a lot of experimentation always. We want to innovate across the entire business model. We want to innovate and explore new forms of positioning, which is branding, and who customers do we choose, and what attributes our brands hold. We want to come up with new product ideas and product attributes, and be improving our products. We want to find new channels to market, new ways of reaching the fish in those other ponds. We want to explore new pricing models, new who pays, what basis they pay, when they pay. We want to explore new promotion strategies to get people through the funnel from awareness to consideration to trial, repeat. We want to experiment with new physical experiences. We want to explore and deepen ways to express our purpose. So we want to be doing new things across all of these, because the things that we did that are new are going to eventually erode, and our competitors are going to copy them if they are successful. So we need to be continually finding new ways. And for all of these, you need processes, which is operations, which is your job as a COO, is to operationalize these new things that we do. For that, we need people. So there are 9 P's here. I'm going to show you a few acronyms. I believe all models are wrong. Some are useful. I made them P's so it's kind of easier to remember and sort of like a checklist, but it's a very helpful checklist to ask ourselves, what are we doing to create an advantage in each of these things? Now, they're good ideas and bad ideas. Really bad idea is an idea that your customers don't like. An okay idea, but still a bad idea, is an idea that your customers like, but that your competitors will copy quickly. A great idea is an idea that your customers love and that your competitors won't copy for a long time. Um, Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. The idea here is that we want to do something our competitors will ignore and laugh at. If you look at any great company and you look at your companies, I bet you that uh, you can uh, re-engineer your results and find that at the foundation of your result was a choice that your competitors ignored and laughed at. Whether that was Southwest Airlines deciding to go point to point when everyone was going hub and spoke and building hubs, whether that's Sam Walton deciding he's going to grow, he's going to build shops in rural areas rather than cities. Every great company is founded on fourth options, which is what I call these ideas. It's just a metaphor that says there's a point where people inside your company, they're going to stop thinking. When you hear your CEO or your CMO or anyone in the company say, I have solved this problem before, there are 3 ways to do this, what it means is they've stopped looking for new options. They've stopped thinking. We are lazy. Humans are engineered to be lazy. We don't have the bandwidth to rethink everything every day. So we operate mostly on automatic pilot, and most companies operate on automatic pilot. But when innovators do, is they realize where competitors have stopped thinking, and they look for a fourth option. Does that make sense? 3 just represents the point at which, it's like a magic number. Great orators repeat in 3s. When I was at McKinsey, they trained me to break everything down into 3s and 3 sets of 3s and 3 sets of 3s. It sort of lulls us to sleep. 3. This search for a fourth option results in advances in every domain. In sports, for example, before 1968, there were 3 ways to go over high bars. And in 1968, someone did this. They jumped over the high bar backward. They won the Olympics. It took the competition 8 years to copy them. 8 years later, 90% of high jumpers were using this technique. Anyone know what the name of this technique is? You could either just unmute and speak or chat.
Fosbury flop.
The Fosbury flop, right, Paul? The Fosbury flop by Dick Fosbury, not created by, but first person to do it at the Olympics, Dick Fosbury. What's great about this story is there are 2 important things here. There's no new technology that suddenly appears in 1968 that enables you to go over the high bar backward. The technology is just pads that are put on the other side of high bars. And we were laying down those pads already 15 years before he did this. Now, we're not flipping over backwards. What we are thinking about generative AI. We're thinking about blockchain. We're thinking about IoT devices getting cheaper. We're thinking about the growth of at-will talent. There are techniques that are available to us that we do not pursue, but not because they're not technically feasible, but because there's agreement not to do it. Before 1968, every gold medal winner went over forward. Every trainer of every Olympic athlete trained them to go over forward. So the fourth option will necessarily evoke in your team and in your boss disbelief. And if it does not, then it's probably not a fourth option, because if your team gets it, your competitors will get it really quickly too. Second thing I want to point out is what makes these fourth options feasible is not whether it's technically feasible, but rather the language around the technology. So strategy is just talking. All strategists do is talk and talk and talk, right? Where are we going to go for dinner? I like pizza. You like Mexican. You like Chinese. We debate, but then we make a choice. And when we step out of the conference room, we either go left or right or straight, depending on which place we decide to go for dinner. But so the language results in a conclusion, and that conclusion decides on our decisions, which then shapes reality. The language is really important. And if you use the same language that you've always used to create strategy, you will end up limiting the options that you see and the options you choose to the same options. So my approach is very much about introducing emerging language in strategy. And I'm going to introduce you to what some of the emerging language is. Sorry, let me clip that. Now is a great time to be rethinking strategy, because when the rules change, it allows you to play the game differently. So we'll stay with business for one more example. This is the average height of the last 5 NBA most valuable players. 1960, so the 5 years leading up to 1960, I look, what are their heights? The 5 best players average out the height, a little bit over 80 inches tall. Next 2.5 decades, what's the trend? Someone just speak out. What's the trend?
Getting taller.
They're getting taller. Best players are getting taller and taller and taller. 1985, 5 years leading up to 1985, something weird happens. They're shorter. And they're almost as short as they were 2.5 decades ago. Now, maybe this is a blip. Maybe there are like 1 or 2 great short players. So let's play this out further. Next 5 years, no, they're shorter. It looks like almost now something has changed. Before, the best players are getting taller and taller. Now the best players are shorter. And actually, no, it's not a new normal. It is a new trend. The best players are actually getting shorter and shorter and shorter. What happens that changes the game around 1980?
3-point line.
Exactly, Stephen. The 3-point line. The 3-point line is introduced. It changes the rules. Some players adapt to a new game, others do not. Some teams adapt to a new game, others do not. And I think that we are facing not one 3-point line, but multiple 3-point times. When we get together with our chief strategy officers, we talk about what are the trends that they're concerned with. And at the top of their list are these trends. Next generation employees and customers who have different needs and different desires and different behaviors. How do we recruit them? How do we retain them? They're thinking about personalization, the ability to personalize at scale to a great extent, because more of the product that you deliver is digital today than it was 10 years ago, which allows you to personalize at a zero marginal cost. And the expectation from your customers, therefore, that you do that, that's due in part to digitization, the digital experience, which creates cybersecurity risks, which creates a need for blockchain and distributed technologies. Of course, the last year, we've seen a blowing up of the adoption of AI and analytics. We see P2P and platform models winning. We see IoT devices getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. We see regulatory uncertainty. We see a steady decline in loyalty of your customers to your brand and your employees to your company. We see geopolitical uncertainty, especially now, and a demand for sustainability. So we are facing a very different game today. And I really think that we are on the cusp of an inflection in which we're going to get to choose, how do we compete? Do we keep playing the old game, or do we learn the new game? Do we keep going over the high bar forward, or do we learn to go over the high bar backward? So I'm just going to share with you like 5 steps that you could take. Think of them maybe as sort of coaching steps that you could take to help the people that you interact with in the company come up with 4th options, because it is the 4th it is important today to come up with 4th options. It always was important, but today it's more important because the rules are changing. Any questions about what I've covered so far? All it says 4th options. When the rules change, is the right time to come with 4th options, especially important to come with 4th options, and the rules are changing. Okay. So how do we come up with 4th options? This is a framework. And at the end of this, I'm going to give you a QR code. You can get a copy of this presentation. I'll give you a workbook. There are on-demand videos, all of that free, open source for you for being part of the COO Alliance. I have nothing else no consulting to offer you. I really just want to arm you with, for those of you who want to take this on, what you need to be able to incorporate this into your companies if you, if you know, if you find it worthwhile to pursue so. So I don't know, you're sitting with your CEO, you're sitting in your management team, you're about to make a strategic decision. You want to avoid the risk of doing what we've always done, which is let's get more efficient. Let's save some money. Let's invest some of that money in product and marketing and sales, right? Every strategy is some combination of that. We want to come up with something different. First, we want to imagine, step out into the future and envision a long distant future. Second, we want to dissect. We want to dissect the problem into components and choose where to focus strategically rather than focusing on where we always focus on. We then want to generate options, but lots of options. We want to generate 40 to 200 options instead of 3 to 5 options. We then analyze those options and prioritize them, making space for you to consider the crazy idea, because the fourth option will appear crazy at the beginning. And then, which we won't talk about here, is basically building buy-in and support for the idea, which means in your case probably is plugging it into whatever your execution framework is. So I was just going to touch on each of these and just give you some tips on each one. Does that sound good? Any questions yet? There's no magic to this. I've just been doing, there's so much I don't know anything about. I'm very clear about that. It's just for the last 30 years, I've just been really interested in strategy, and I've been using this and refining it. There's no magic to it. It's just, as I have done this 400, 500 times, I've just tried to simplify it to make it easier for you to do. And it works. All right. So imagine basically says is like, don't play like a regular chess, like a normal chess player, an average chess player. I'm an average chess player. My strategy when I play with my son, I got 3 kids, as Cameron mentioned. My youngest son's 14. He beats me at chess all the time. My strategy is let me get my pawns towards him and hope that I get him in checkmate. His strategy is let me envision checkmate and then work backward from there. Like that's how we should be doing strategy. We all know that. And yet what we do, the strategic approaches that we use encourage us to play like really bad chess players, right? We look at our past performance. We've been growing at 15%. Could we grow at 17%? We have an NPS score of 30. Could we get to 35? We define our goals based off of past performance. And what we're really doing is we're filtering out goals that we do not immediately know how to achieve given what we already know to do. We set goals that we could achieve just doing what we've done before a little bit better, faster, more efficiently. And so, of course, we end up doing what we've done before. So what we want to do is get our teams to zoom out into the future and envision a far distant future and then zoom back in. I graduated from undergrad with Elon Musk, and before he was really, really famous, I couldn't get to him now, but before he was really famous, I used that to get an interview with him soon after he launched SpaceX. And I asked him, so what happened? You sold PayPal, you netted $150 million for yourself, and you decided to invest all of that in building rocket ships. Why did he do that? And he said, I just think a future in which anyone can shoot stuff in space is more exciting than one in which only the government can. And so I asked him to explain that to me. And he said, well, in the future, humans will become interplanetary species. We can't afford to do that right now because it costs too much to build and launch a rocket ship. That's because NASA has a monopoly on the near space program. They're going to, if they privatize that, it'll drive down the cost to launch ships by 90%. So they are going to do it. I don't know if it's going to be in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but I'm going to build the company that's perfectly tailored to take it off their hands. It sounds crazy, right? The next week, I gave a workshop to Lockheed Martin and a leadership team there, and I shared this, and what did they do? They ignored and laughed at him. He doesn't know anything about the business. This is complicated. We've been doing this for so long that expertise that we bring to the, especially to the goal setting, can really limit us. So that's the first tip, right? Is get our leaders to zoom out, envision a distant future, and then zoom in and say, what do we need to be, what position do we need to be at to be positioned for that long term? And if you want to download the workbook, you'll see there are 5 steps that I find are particularly useful. Great. Any questions about that? That's pretty straightforward. Okay. Next is you're gonna now you imagine you've said, okay, I don't know, could one of you just share with me what company or what kind of business you're in, just to make it a little more real?
Outsource customer support.
Outsource customer support. So okay, so let's imagine 10 years from now, or maybe further from now, what is Checkmate look like in the space of outsourced customer support?
Robots, no people.
Great. 0 people, fully integrated, fully white labeled. I have no idea that I'm being talking to an outsourced thing, right? Perfect. So get us to zoom out. And each time we're strategizing, say, remember, 0 people, 0 visibility or something, into that it's outsourced. Great. So if you can name that, it's really helpful, so that every time you're in the conference room, you can just say, remember, and get them to zoom out. Awesome. Now we go to dissect. Here's the problem. So how do we get to 0 people in the future? What kind of ideas have you guys discussed, Graham, about getting there?
Obviously, with AI, even just in its kind of infancy stage, there's a lot that we're already starting to do there that either makes humans significantly more powerful and more efficient and effective, or can allow them to focus on only the things that humans can do. Like right now, that'd be video calls, video support calls, as opposed to typed like live chat support.
Great. Excellent. Okay. Awesome. So let me just go back. I'm gonna as I said, I'm just gonna flip around slides a little bit, just so we get more conversational. There'll be some slides I don't show, but let's just go back to these 9 Ps. So let me assert that your focus area right now is under product and the technology in your product, and maybe people, but it's the people who are your customers. So those are probably still product or positioning as opposed to your people, right? Yep. So then what you say is, great, we have got great ideas around product and positioning. Awesome. Now, what about placement? If in that future, what does placement look like? That's like, what are the channels to customers? What new customers might you reach through what channels?
Because robots, or I say robots, that's just a funny term for AI, but because AI is trainable on pretty much everything, I think it would open up your customer base, because no longer are you just supporting, we support digital marketing agencies. So no longer will we be constrained to the niche of digital marketing agencies. We'd be able to support anybody who has robust documentation.
Great. Excellent. Now, pricing. What does pricing look like? It's ideal is when people pay when they get value. What's the moment that a customer gets value in that future?
I think the moment is when they basically, to get to eliminate an internal cost center, turn that around and do it at significantly higher volume than they could do themselves. And so I think that the value that you provide there will define your ability to price.
Great. Removing expensive people from their books, right? Yep. Maybe you can start charging for every happy customer, or you can start charging for every return customer, or you could start charging based off of their customer lifetime value, right? And then you have promotion ideas, physical experience ideas. So what you do is you kind of step them back and you say, we have been focusing on one of these Ps. Let's expand our scope of exploration, and let's look for other places to innovate. Apple took 30 years to figure this out. until 2002, 2003, they're primarily innovating under physical experience and product. Then when they change their name from Apple Computer to Apple, then they start innovating on services and channels and pricing. Amazon figured out the trick much earlier. We can see if we put year one as a year of founding, Amazon scaling much, much more quickly. So the first thing the next thing to do is to look at multiple of these P's. I'm going to skip those. All right, so now we've avoided, imagine we've avoided them thinking myopically about just near term, zoomed out. Then we've avoided them looking myopically at just the areas of the problem or the business model that we focus on. We've opened up the aperture. Now we want to generate lots of options. How do humans generate options? We can learn a lot about that by studying great chess players. This is Alexander Kostanuk. If you've seen the TV series The Queen's Gambit, you probably remember a scene where the main character plays a whole team of chess players, happens to be all boys because only boys are allowed to play chess now, and she beats them all, right? She can look at a board and she can see the winning move immediately. How does she do that? It has to do with the fact that at this stage in the strategizing process, we don't want to use logic. We want to use patterns. Every game has a beginning, middle, and end, you could say. At the end of the game, logic makes sense. When your business is mature, you have fewer competitors, you've learned a lot, logic is helpful. At the beginning of the game, it is less helpful. Instead, it's more appropriate to use patterns. And that's why great chess players recognize more patterns. Master chess players recognize twice as many patterns as experts, and grandmasters recognize 10 times as many. I believe that there are fundamentally 36 different patterns. This is what my doctorate work was based on. Most of my research is based on. In the stuff that you can download the workbook. You'll see lists of these lists of 36 patterns. That's my world, is looking at strategy through these 36 lenses. I believe every strategic concept that you've ever learned, that we've ever studied, fits one of these 36. 10 years ago, I did a research study and I looked at companies that really outperform their peers. Which of these 36 are they using? And I found that they use these 5 patterns. So I think I'm going to just briefly describe these 5 patterns. Again, I'm taking more time speaking than I intended to. So I'm going to just briefly describe these, okay? Move really to the next battleground is kind of what we talked about with Elon Musk, skating to where the puck is going to be rather than the puck is. And we need to do that because cycle times are accelerating. A nice way to think about the next battleground is the topic of my next book, which is proximity. The idea is that across every industry, what we see is digital technologies are enabling us to move towards P = 0. That is to say, when the production and provision of value moves to the point of demand in time and space. Ultimately, we produce the value at the place and the moment it is needed. This soda machine produces value closer to the point and when it's needed. It mixes the syrup with the soda when it is needed. It's less expensive and provides more variety. That machine on the right is a DARPA-funded device. It takes basic ingredients and it creates up to 15 different drugs from scratch at the point and when it's needed. Across every domain, what we see is this shift towards proximity. 3D printing allowing us to print parts closer to when and it's needed. Drone capacity, being able to move stuff in smaller stuff quicker to where it is needed. This drone can lift 400 pounds, 25 miles. Food getting grown closer to when it's needed in our kitchens. This is a Miele product. Across every domain, what we see is we're moving closer to the point at which what you want is produced when and where it's needed. So that's a helpful thing to think about, is like, imagine the value that we create. Our customer wants it, and we wait until the last minute to produce it when and where it's needed. Another thing we see is ability to coordinate. And just like in nature, power comes from coordination. We're seeing the ability to coordinate, opening up new business models, platform business models. Blockchain is an example of this. We're seeing everything becoming smart farms, smart production, smart manufacturing, smart warehousing, smart homes, smart construction, smart offices, smart automobiles. And so if we can create greater coordination in the system, we can create power. This is a company called Afresh, and they recognize that 38% of the food that's produced in the United States or in the world is wasted. And a lot of that's because we can't coordinate across the supply chain. A truck pulls up at a grocery store, and the grocery's not ready to unload it, so the fruit starts getting bad. We can't predict how many people are going to buy that fruit tomorrow, and so it is basically using AI and digitizing the entire chain to better predict and therefore remove waste. They're in 3,000 grocery stores in the US today. New ways of coordinating internally. Kaihan is a company that is a huge, successful company, grew from 15 billion to 31 billion in revenue over 5 years. And what it says it did was it took its company, its hierarchy, and it broke its company down to 4,000 micro enterprises, each with their own CEO. And then they turned all their support functions into micro enterprises as well. So exploring new ways to coordinate internally. And this basically just says, my research shows that companies that are embracing ways of coordinating non-hierarchically internally, they significantly outperform their competition. So the next thing we want to look at is who or what is uncoordinated. Anyone doing anything interesting with coordinating the uncoordinated? All right, the next pattern is basically, it basically says, you want to think about what business we're really in. And companies that are really thriving aren't defining themselves by their industry, right? We're not in the customer service outsourcing business. We are in some other business. We happen to do customer service outsourcing. You know, late Tony Hsieh would always say, we're not in the shoe business, we're in the customer service business. We happen to sell shoes. Flatiron Health is a company founded by these two Googlers. They created something that looks like practice management software, but really they're a data company. And they give oncologists input from their data on what practices are working with their patients. Long story short, they stick with this self-identification of data. They make a number of decisions that seem unusual for a practice management software company. It makes sense for a data company. They grow, and after 7 years, they sell the company for $2.1 billion to Roche. Very powerful to play around with what your self-identity is. What business are we really in, and what would that kind of company do? Next one is to be good. It's just basically to say, look at how we can profitably solve problems in the world. We can show a very strong correlation between successful companies and companies who view their job as not just to create shareholder value, but to serve multiple stakeholders. And what I'm not talking about is, I'm not talking about, oh, it's a good thing to do good, make some money and then do good. I'm saying aligning our market opportunity with the social opportunity. So Ajay Banga, he's the CEO. He was the CEO of MasterCard. He joined when it was $25 a share. He left, it was $350 a share. He's now the president of the World Bank. And I interviewed him for my podcast, and he said, basically what we realized is our market opportunity is cash, stealing market share from cash, not from American Express or Visa. So we're going to drive, our whole strategy is a world beyond cash. But then he said, a world beyond cash is a better world. Because in a world beyond cash, drug dealers aren't going to sell your drugs to your child without that being traceable. In a world beyond cash, when governments give money to their citizens, it's not going to get pilfered off by middlemen along the way. They're going to get all of the money they deserve. What does that do? Aligning your growth with good, it activates ecosystems, partners, governments, NGOs, um, uh, rights groups, employees. And so what we want to look at is, how can we create this strategic power? By profitably doing good things in the world. It might just be recognizing and being really explicit about how your growth is good for the world and aligning that with your messaging. And the last one is create something out of nothing, which basically says we tend to play with the things on the board rather than thinking of adding new things to the board. What if we added new things to the board? AirAsia, guy named Tony Fernandez, he quit his job in 2001. He bought AirAsia for 27 cents. It was bankrupt. Today, it's the second largest discount airline in the world. His whole idea was, let's not compete for airline customers. Let's compete for non-airline customers, people who are just staying at home or people who are taking railroads. What we're talking about in that case is non-consumption. You're looking for customers who should be buying, but they're not buying from you and they're not buying from anyone else. They're, just to stay with Graham, they're doing their own customer service. Why are they not consuming? Either price, they can't afford it, or they don't think they can afford it. Access, they don't have access to you. Know-how, they don't know how to work with you or contract with you or use your product or service. Or time, I'm so busy running my company, I don't have time to talk to you about this. So you identify these pockets of non-consumption, and that way you're not competing with other competitors directly. You're not trying to steal customers away from your competition. You're trying to steal them from non-consumption. Categories. I did this workshop for Microsoft. I can now talk about it because this was like 1999, just before Apple's about to launch the iPad. We do a strategy session, and the question is, what should we do about this new product that Apple's going to introduce? What did they conclude? They looked at a market share report, and they saw the market share of tablet computers is very small and it's not growing. Their conclusion is there's nothing to do. They didn't appreciate that Apple was going to expand a new category. Same thing that Red Bull did with energy drinks. Same thing that Gatorade did when it was selling salty water on football fields for years, growing and growing. Pepsi and Coke don't see them growing because they're not looking at the category. So these are 5 things that we can look for to create categories. One of my friends' clients, Julie Copeland, she, second generation, runs a company and owns a company that sells safety equipment. Very low margin business. They're selling to purchasing managers. Purchasing managers are very price sensitive. So she says, what we'd like to create out of nothing. What if we could create a new category called safety? Let's not sell safety equipment. Let's sell safety. What does safety look like? Well, we're going to take safety equipment. We're going to add to it OSHA compliance consulting, and we're going to add to it safety training. We're going to wrap it all up in an envelope that we're going to call safety care. They start selling it. After 6 months, it's 10% of its revenue. Now it's their it's definitely their largest profit driver and their primary offer, because they sell this to CFOs and they sell it based off of saving the cost and risks of safety. CFOs are much less price sensitive and much more loyal than a purchasing manager. So higher margins, easier to sell, differentiation. You can bundle up or disaggregate down to remove yourself from competing in the category that your competitors compete in. So what would you like to add to the game? That's the 5th question. So as we get to expand, it's helpful to introduce new patterns. These 5 are really helpful new patterns to introduce. By the way, next week or the following week, I'm going to publish an article in Harvard Business Review that I redid this. I only shared it yesterday for the first time. And these are the strategic patterns. These are the 6 ones that are going to replace those 5 that outperformers are citing more often than their peers. So in a week or two, that'll be released. All right, so we've zoomed them out. Envision a day when we have no employee, they have no customer service employees. We've dissected, we said, okay, we've got product and positioning. Let's talk about pricing models. We've expanded, we've generated all these ideas. Now, what happens to the ideas? You almost always throw the good ideas away because good ideas look impossible. And so what we want to make sure that we have time to do is to sit with seemingly impossible ideas. Albert Einstein said, it's not that I'm so smart, it's that I stay with problems longer. And so this is the last bit I'll share with you. Take your ideas and just plot them on a 2x2. Is it easy or difficult? If we did it, would be high or low impact. You're going to find that you have some wasted time as ideas. Stop doing those ideas. And a tip is that there are things that you're doing right now that are wastes of time. So when you do this, you can stop doing them. You end up with a bunch of tactics. Just save a long list and just every month take some down and just execute them. We're going to find some things that look like winning moves. However, the fourth option almost always appears to be a crazy idea. Going back to what we said before, we want our competitors to ignore and laugh at us. They're going to ignore and laugh at us because it's inconsistent with what they know works in the industry, which means that the people that you work with who are in the industry are going to say, it's not going to work. So what most companies do with crazy ideas is they put them on the back burner until a competitor does them. And so what we just want to make sure is we have time to do is to spend time thinking about, talking about, exploring crazy ideas. And turning that crazy idea into a winning move is what becomes the fourth option. So anyway, let me stop there. This is a QR code where you can download this presentation, a workbook, free access to online courses, all of that open source for you. I think we have only like 5 minutes for any discussion. I apologize for that. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please, Nicole.
This was awesome. I love strategy talk. You could have talked for another hour and I'd still be happy just listening. But I wrote down kind of at the first part where you talked about kind of the imagine side of things. Where it was, don't define your goals based on past performance. What's more exciting to you in the future than what you do now? And, I'm guilty of the McKinsey 1, 2, 3. So thanks for highlighting that. But what are some suggestions you have when you're working with a group of smart people and you're trying to kind of think of that future that's different, right? Spurring that innovation. Do you have any easy tricks? Maybe 4, not 3, 4 ideas.
Yeah. So on that first phase, in the workbook, you'll see, here's what I found is really helpful. There's 5 steps. Step 1 is the mess. Describe the undesirable but realistic future that will occur if we continue on the current path, and let people just pour out all their frustrations. I talked to Nicole and she said this and she never answers her phone and the customers are pissed off, and write all that stuff down. It creates a sense of discontent, but also people sometimes aren't willing to think about positive future things because there's stuff in their head that they haven't said, that haven't been heard. So get all that out, just a cathartic pouring out. The second step is to talk about the trends. So you're not yet talking about the company. What are the trends that are going to affect all of the companies in this sector? And then go to, what do we want to be in that long-term future? Last 2 steps are, therefore, what must be true in the near term? And that's the trick, right? That is a trick. You get them really attached to this long-term, a future where we have no customer service employees, right? Oh, I love it. In that case, what has to be true next year? You paint them into a corner. And if they say, oh, no, but we can't do that. I'm like, I didn't ask you if you could do that or not. I asked you what needs to be true. Anyway, then turn that into a question. But starting with the mess is really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll just add one more, but we're all kind of so deep in our industries. So sometimes it's hard to be creative, especially as operators. I'm not, I'm not accusing the rest of you of not being as uncreative as I am, but like, we're very process driven, and like it's hard to be creative, and like my mind isn't like Elon Musk, right? So how do you spur that creativity to think about those crazy possibilities?
I was gonna say, I mean, you could do the process. I say 3 steps, three tips. One would be you're in this great group here. Learn about their industries. Ask them how would they approach your thing, because there are trends and behaviors in other domains that are foreign to you but are proven in somewhere else. And often the creativity is just taking what works somewhere else that hasn't been used in your domain, apply it. I don't know. Ask Ashley, how would you approach this problem from your industry? That would be one. The second is create space for crazy ideas. Have like a introduce the term crazy idea or something like that, and just be able to say, I have this idea, I haven't proven it, I call it a crazy idea, but we can still still talk about it. I forget what my third thing was, but I think that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lauren?
Mine's a bit of a follow-up to this, and like everyone is saying in the chat, I could probably listen to you talk for another 2 hours and take a ton of notes on this. This was great.
Tell my kids.
I think my question is, so we work off of our company works off of the Vivid Vision format that Cameron brought into our team.
Awesome.
And when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, wow, these are big goals. There's a lot here. But even still, like we've been sitting with it it's been consistent for about 7 months now, which is a long time for our CEO. And it feels like it's a bit boxed after listening to you. So how do we blend the vivid vision and needing to see something like seeing those concrete goals, but also leaving space for the crazy thoughts and the impossible, but making sure that we're still working forward?
Yep. I don't know if Cameron would agree with this. However, I would say maybe take the vivid vision and maybe make a couple distinctions. One is long term versus near term, and you might have elements of that are near term in there, or maybe you should separate those out so that you can zoom out. The second is, think of the fortress and the ship. So you have a fortress, you have ship. If your fortress is your core business, you need to defend and protect the core business. But if you only live in the fortress, eventually someone's going to come attack you, the walls are going to crumble, and you're not going to have anything. The ship is going out and looking for new territory. But if you're only looking for new territory, you're not going to have a fortress to come back to. So if you introduce a distinction like that, or you can use Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, or you can use a 3-box solution, or you could use core and whatever, some distinction like that allows people to shift modes from, okay, operational, defend, efficiency, to explore, creative, take risks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just carving out the space for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Walker?
Hey, yeah, great presentation. So 2 quick questions. One is, like somebody else mentioned, I'm super technical minded, like everybody on this call. I think our annual planning sessions tend to be a little light on the strategy and kind of, hey, same old industry report, same old SWOT analysis. Let's kind of rinse and repeat next year, focus on tactics. Yep. Even some of the open-ended questions that you've asked during this presentation just sent my mind down a million different rabbit holes. And I'm curious, like, I don't know if this is something that you do or the others do that you would recommend, but like, do you ever see organizations have strategy retreats or one-day strategy session where somebody comes in and leads a consultation, and leads folks through these exercises, just with the effort of getting all of this out of folks' brains?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a nice way to do it if you have the time, and if people are otherwise get sucked into the core business, or, get very operational to get them out and to give them the space for a day or 2 or a week to do that. I mean, there are a lot of coaches that are scaling up coaches, or metronome coaches, or EOS coaches, who are also getting trained in this method. So you could like work with someone like that. But I would say this is a technical, if you're technical, imagine is your problem statement. And all we're doing with the problem statement is we're defining a long-term problem, not a near-term problem. Dissect is your root cause. And all we're doing is doing the root cause, but not addressing just the root cause. We're addressing a different leverage point that might not be the root cause, but could make the root cause no longer a cause. In expand, we're creating hypotheses of solutions, and we're just not coming up with 3 hypotheses. We're coming up with 100 hypotheses. And in analyze, we are assessing the hypotheses, but we're not focusing only in on the hypotheses that will work. We're including hypotheses that might work if we worked on them more. So you can fit that into a,
Got it. So you don't have specific groups that you've worked with in the past that actually come in and facilitate days or multiple days.
I mean, I try not to be too self-promotional here, but we have a community of 4th option coaches who are trained in this, and really good ones that could come and facilitate a day or over of several days the approach, definitely. And in the link that was just sent, there is there's a link to that, or you can just email me.
Yeah, and it's one other really quick question. And when you're generating these 4th ideas, you say they need to sound crazy or unachievable or unique. You had a helpful framework, like with the easy and impactful kind of grid, but do you have any other tools like that that help you suss out what are actually just bad ideas what are the crazy ideas that are actually good, because like that seems to be like the sweet spot.
Yeah. So you take after you map them out, you take a crazy idea, and there in the workbook, you'll see a worksheet for this. You take that idea and you say, what are the 3 barriers that make this look really difficult? Technically, we can't do it. It's going to cost too much money, and our customers don't want it. And then you brainstorm for each of those. What are 3 possible ways to remove the barrier? You're brainstorming again, but you're brainstorming on execution. You're kind of like pressure testing idea. Could there be a way to solve the technical problem? We could buy it. We could build it. We could go look and see if it's there. Could there be a way to overcome the cost? Maybe it's not as costly as expense as we thought. Could we get a loan? Could we partner? And I forget what the 3rd one was, but you brainstorming again on, but on execution, and then that helps you in 10 minutes really move from, oh, that was a joke. That just seems so weird. That was a joke. Let's get to what, something else, to, I don't know if it's going to work, but it's worth at least picking up the phone and calling someone and checking the price of something, So you can do that on 10 minutes for the crazy ideas. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Walker. Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, that was great. My first one was somewhat tangential to Walker. So if you want to say you've already addressed this, we can move to the second one. But it was around, how do you balance not suppressing, ideas, but also realizing that this could go to the other end of the spectrum where you've just got so many ideas, it feels unmanageable. And then depending on how you want to address that one. The second question was if you could speak a little bit more to the bundling up to basically create a different market than your competitor is working in.
Yep. So the first thing I think it's really helpful to increase the kill rate of your ideas and kill them off more quickly, but kill them off systematically. So a lot of our members like this idea of a 5-5-5 experiment. Give 5 people $5,000, 5 weeks, 1 or 2 days a week, run an experiment. You take that crazy idea exercise, what must be true, these 3 things, and you test one of them. The one that's the easiest to test and that is critical, that if you proves to be wrong, it will kill off the viability of the idea, and just test that, but really quickly and inexpensively. That allows you to get through. The second tip is to have a whole portfolio of ideas, and every quarter or every year, you just pick a few of them. Like you have your 4-quadrant thing filled with Post-it notes of 100 ideas, and just say, this year, we're going to take this one, and this one. But we haven't forgotten all the other ones, but we're not going to invest time in them. And then as those ones, it's almost like a scrum board, like if it doesn't make it, then you just throw it away, and then you take the next one and put it into exploration and then execution. So bundling out is really like, if you're selling apples, everyone's selling apples. you can't sell your apples for a higher price. But if you take your apples and you combine them with some sugar and some dough and you just make an apple pie, now you're the only one selling apple pie. And people can't price compare the apples in your apple pie to the apple to other people's apples, right? So it's not just by adding value, I'm adding more value, so we charge it, but you actually remove yourself from direct competition. So thinking about the categories, which is really helpful. Have you guys heard this term jobs to be done? Clayton Christensen introduced it. If you Google Clayton Christensen jobs to be done and milkshakes, you'll find a great video of him explaining jobs to be done. And that really helps you think about your customer has a job to be done and they get it done with a product. If you can get it done with a product that's in a different category, then they're not going to be able to compare your product to their product. And then you replace the product they use to get that job done. It's essentially a substitute. Very cool. I know I've taken up more time than I was
thank
given,
you so
but
much.
thank you.
That was amazing. We will share your presentation. We've got another 100-ish members that weren't able to attend today. They will be getting a copy of your presentation. The presentations
Awesome.
are saved in our member portal. All of you, I really highly suggest that this is one that you share with your leadership team and your CEO. Have them watch this so they understand this. But Kaihan, thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so great seeing you. I'm off to a robotics competition for my son now.